And welcome to another great episode of the Bailey Pod on this beautiful evening. I hope everybody's doing well. Real quick before we dive into the show, I just want to make sure that everybody goes and follow the Bailey Pod. I'll be bringing you content via YouTube each and every week. You can catch us via YouTube each and every week. Also, too, last but not least, remember to click the bell. Click that bell in the corner there for all new content that will be actually dropping. Hot content will be dropping during the actual weekday. Without further ado, my next guest tonight, really good friend of mine. Been knowing this guy here for quite some time. You guys have probably seen him on the news during the weekday. I'm a part of his great, fabulous show every Friday night, football show that he's had for some time now, called the OT, the Overtime. Without further ado, my special guest tonight, we're going to get into some really good conversation tonight about high school football. But without further ado, Scott Leber. Scott, how you doing, man?
Tim, doing great. Always love talking football with you, especially high school football. I go back I remember when you were running with the pigskin for the Boylan Titans in the very early 90s. That's how far we go back.
Scott, please don't age me. Don't age me, man. Don't age
I'm going to age you a lot tonight. So,
hey, no, but I appreciate you taking time out of your busy night and getting on with me. I know, we're already, can you believe it or not, we're already, midway through the season, and, you've covered some great games. We've seen a lot of great games together. I just want to dive into a game that we both were at Friday night, Boylan Auburn. I want to start out with that game first. Scott, again, a lot of people thought that, Auburn may have had a chance in this one. And a lot of people thought Boylan would, do what they did. What did you see Friday night? And, can Auburn really rebound from this? And can Boylan really do better this weekend coming up as they take on the Hononegah Indians?
Yes and yes. Both teams can definitely play much better because there were far too many penalties on both sides. And, no penalty is a good penalty, but there were just a lot of bad penalties in that game for both teams. So both teams can definitely play better and need to play better. Was I surprised? I did think Auburn would keep it a little closer, and basically they did for a half because it was a one-touchdown game until right before halftime when the Titans struck on that long touchdown pass to Philip Dixon. So otherwise, the first half was fairly even, and then the second half it got away from the Knights. But the Knights they struggled with their passing game, and as we know, in the big games, it really helps to have that passing game. And they couldn't get the run game going like they wanted to. DeBose was held to like 30 yards on 10 carries. So if that's happening, that's never good for the Auburn Knights. But
right.
I still come away impressed with the Auburn Knights, the strides they made this year, and the way they conducted themselves in that game, because they did play physical. They did play really hard from start to finish. They never gave up. And I really liked their body language throughout that game.
Sure.
That even when it got out of hand in the second half, I didn't see Auburn hanging their heads or pointing fingers or anything. That showed me a lot about the maturity and the growth of that team there. And Willie Tolan's going to keep those guys rising, I think.
Absolutely. And I agree with you. I don't think the Auburn Knights really have anything to lament about from Friday night. Again, I agree with you. I thought they played well, but they just didn't capitalize on their opportunities. I think one big thing I think going forward that you just mentioned also too, the quarterback play. I think going forward, you need more productivity out of Purefoy. Will they get that? It's yet to be seen. But I think overall, the Knights are for real. I think they are better than what they showed and what the actual score depicted the other night against Boylan. I think Coach Tolan's doing a phenomenal job with those kids. Again, like you just stated, the kids didn't hang their heads down. There wasn't anything that to where you looked at the Auburn sideline and said, okay, oops, there goes their season. So yeah, I totally agree with you right out of the gates. They just met a better team that night. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would say so too. Boylan's got a little more weapons on offense. Their linemen are very, very good. Not that Auburn's linemen are very good. I'm very impressed with their play too. I'm really looking forward to Friday night from an Auburn perspective too, because they play Belvedere North. So we're going to learn more again about the Auburn Knights this coming Friday, how they respond to the adversity, to the loss, and just how good they could potentially be if they can clean up some of those penalties and things.
Sure. And just to spotlight Auburn here just for a few more minutes here, their offense, they run the ball well. I think DuBose did a really good job of getting, into that second level. At times during the actual Boylan game, you saw him break, 5 or 10 yard runs. And obviously, he's a beast to bring down. He's really tough to bring down. Again, I think, against Belvedere North, in order for Auburn to be able to stay in the game with a great team like a Belvedere North, I think they really need to establish that passing game. And I don't know what at this juncture in the season, what Purefoy actually can do to really get that passing game, in a rhythm, so to speak, because he never really found his rhythm. He had a lot of a few ill-advised passes. A few times on the sideline, I was saying to myself, who is he throwing the ball to? There wasn't a receiver, in the actual area that he was throwing to. And again, his mechanics, his mechanics really need to improve. I think it's kind of too late at midseason to try to improve a kid's throwing mechanics. Something like that should have been probably worked on, during the offseason. But, to say the least, Auburn, they played a good game. They fought. But again, I think they ran into a Boylan team who wanted to make a statement that night. But then they also too keep that winning record, that win streak going into this big week coming up. So a few notable stats I have here, Scott. I don't know if you knew this, but total offense. I think I mentioned this on the show the other night on the OT on your show. But total offense, 146 Auburn, 322 Boylan. You can't say enough about Boylan's run game. They got that three-headed monster going. With Johnson, and then Hansard. And then Alonzo, that's right. A really tough group to really try to stop. Auburn's 146 again. That's not enough offense to actually even to compete with a really good team like Boylan. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. And I think a big part of that game too was Boylan's kicker Patricio Lopez, who was knocking a few of those kickoffs through the end zone and Auburn never really had good field position throughout that game.
At all.
And so, when you have to go 80 yards, 75 yards every time against the Boylan Titans defense, that's a tough thing to do. Patricio Lopez is a big weapon for the Boylan Titans, and he may emerge this Friday night.
Sure. Absolutely. I totally agree with you. Let's move on here. Let's move on to penalties. This was a big, notable stat that really stuck out to me because I'm like, okay, both of you teams are going forward into week 6 and you're going to face a stiffer opponent. Particularly the Boylan Titans. 14 for 125. That's way too many penalties for a championship team. I think they really need to focus on cleaning those penalties, those mistakes up this week. As it relates to Auburn, 12 and 107. Again, a lot of penalties going into, this week playing against Belvedere North. Both of these teams have to get better in this realm here in order to be able to actually come out with the victory this weekend. Would you agree?
Yeah, if either one of those teams repeats that stat, they're both going to, Auburn is not going to beat Belvedere North with 12 penalties for 107 yards. Boylan definitely not going to beat Hono if they commit 14 penalties for 125 yards. I think for Boylan, what they wanted last week was to build positive momentum going into Hononegah. And I think with the win and beating a quality team like Auburn, they did achieve that. But then this one stat kind of jumps out as you like, okay, that's a problem that's got to be dealt with real quick.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Let's continue to move on here. The quarterback play, we just illuminated that in our opening, so to speak. But, Dennis, 13 to 21, 142. And there's some Connor Dennis really hasn't had that big game yet, and I smell it. It's permeating, I think it really is. I think it's permeating. I think this game, against Hononegah, I think he's gonna actually come out of his shell, so to speak. He's been playing well all season long. I'm not saying that the kid hasn't been playing well, but I expect bigger things from Connor, and I think he knows that. But again, 13 to 21, 142. Didn't turn the ball over. Actually, he did turn the ball over once where he got stripped, and Auburn took it for 50 yards in the first quarter. But in terms of just his passing efficiency, I think he's been pretty proficient all week. With not all week, but all year within the passing game. Through a TD. I think he just really needs to actually up his game this week, and I think we'll see that. As it relates to, Purefoy Auburn, 7 to 15, 43 yards, 1 INT. Again, I think right now, and anybody who was at that game and anybody who's seen Auburn's play this year has to really say that their Achilles heel right now is their quarterback play. I
Well,
mean,
Pure-
I mean, I like Purefoy. I like what he does.
Tim, if you can hear me, I just lost your audio. I can't hear you for some reason.
Can you hear me now?
Now I got you. Now I got you. Okay.
All right, we're back. Okay, sorry about that. But yeah, so I just think that Auburn needs to figure out what packages can we put together for Purefoy. Do we throw in the flats? Do we throw some intermediate stuff? Because again, I didn't see the arm strength against Boylan last week, and I haven't really seen it all year from him. I definitely didn't see it last year. So that's my worry right now for Auburn is really that quarterback productivity from Purefoy.
Yeah, well, he did throw for 1,300 yards last year, so he's got the ability. It's
Sure.
in there. It just has to emerge. But I like the idea of if defenses are playing Auburn, defending Auburn's run game, and kind of playing up tight to the line of scrimmage. You don't have to throw deep bombs if you're Auburn. Like quick slants, get them out to the edges, those flat passes, because they got some speedsters on the edges who can
Absolutely, they do.
get the yards after the catch. So if they can get some of that going. I think that would really help them out a lot, and maybe they can get it going this week.
And I hope they can too. I think they really run some good things offensively, schematically. I think Coach Tolan does a phenomenal job of just lining his guys up and getting those kids out in space. But again, I think right now, I think the X factor for Auburn to be able to actually move the chains going forward, particularly Friday night coming up against Belvedere North, is going to be it has to be a better quarterback outcome from Purefoy on Friday night. So, Scott, let's go ahead and pivot. We got a big one coming up Friday night. You've been around for 30 plus years. You've covered this rivalry inside and out for over 30 years. What's this rivalry really mean to you, and how has it evolved over the years, or has it pretty much? Go ahead.
No, it's over the last 10 years. It is by far the best rivalry in the Nick 10 with the biggest games. I went through my notes over the last 10 years. These two teams have either won outright or shared the Nick 10 championship 8 out of the 10 years. Okay, that's pretty impressive. Each one has won 4 or shared 4 conference championships over the last 10 years. In their head-to-head meetings, they were right down the middle, 5-5. And in those 10 meetings over the last 10 years, 3 games were decided by 1 point. 1 game was decided by 2 points, and another by 3 points. So it doesn't get much better than that if you're talking rivalries and championships. And back in your day, it was Boylan Belvedere, and then it became Freeport Boylan for a little while when Freeport was ripping off like 3 or 4 consecutive conference championships. But the last 10 years, it's definitely been Hononegah Boylan.
Yeah,
and I did a little research. If I can share this, Tim.
Go for it.
I went back. What year did you graduate? 92?
I can't tell you that.
You can't tell me that?
92 grad. 92 grad. 92.
1990, your junior year, I believe. 1990, it was Hono 29, Boylan 21. Pretty good game there. And then the fall of 91 was Boylan 35, Hononegah 13. And I like this backfield the Titans had in 91. Johnny Hernandez at quarterback. He ran for a touchdown that game. John Cacciatore, I think we're all familiar with John, now the head coach of the Titans.
We should be, right?
He rushed for 101 yards and a TD in that game. And then I got my notes, some guy named Bailey, a rush for 81 yards and 2 touchdowns in that game. So that was in 91.
Wow,
Boylan Hono. What are your memories of being a part of this rivalry?
Well, first of all, let me tell you, I can appreciate the stats, but boy, did you age your brother.
Well, Cacciatore's a young guy, so you got to be a young guy, right?
I feel young. Hey. But no, to answer your question, what I remember from those days, just battles, Hononegah they always came to play. No matter what, they always came to play. Junior year, they came to play. We went there to play them. We actually ended up losing that game, close game, as you just mentioned. Senior year, we were a little bit different team. We had our identity early. I talk about that a lot on Friday nights, teams finding their identity. We knew who we were at that juncture. We knew what we wanted to do. And we knew every Friday night when the lights came on, we were gonna display a great offense and a great defense, and overall a really great team. And I think anybody would tell you that's probably one of the best teams in Boylan history. I'm being unbiased.
Well, you guys went 12-1 that year. Went to the quarterfinals, and you
went to the semifinals.
Okay, you lost to
Chicago
Mount Carmel, 28-6. Mount Carmel, not too shabby. When they were winning like state championships every year. They still are.
And that year, you probably don't recall this, but Donovan McNabb was a sophomore.
Yeah.
So D Nab actually was the backup quarterback to a gentleman by the last name McGrew, who went on to play at Northwestern. Also, too, a notable name, Simeon Rice, who went on and had a phenomenal career at Illinois. Went on, was a first-round pick with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They were stacked. They were stacked that year. They were stacked. So yeah. But back to what we were talking about. Hononegah is always going to be a good team. And I've said it for years. I say it loud. With no bias, Hononegah is always going to be a good team. They're well coached, well-disciplined team. They work hard during the off season. And when you have a program like that has a standard, that has a culture, look out. I mean, because that team can really do something special. So, but no, I think Friday night it's going to be a really good, solid game. You got two great offenses that are going to go head to head. You got two great defenses that I think that are going to match up well. A notable stat that I have here. I don't know if you knew this, but Hononegah has outscored their opponents 247-45 this year. 247-45. That's impressive, Scott. That's pretty darn impressive.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, they've come out every week and taken care of business. Especially, I was at the Harlem game when Harlem scored the first touchdown after a botched punt attempt by Hononegah, and then it was all Hononegah the rest of the way, which you don't expect to see against a good Harlem program. So they've just been ready to go every week. The Indians have been, and if I could throw this out there, I think one reason, getting back to why these two teams have kind of been the teams in the rivalry the last 10 years. Not that Harlem hasn't had its moments, Belvedere North hasn't had its moments, and so forth, but in Auburn under Dan Apino certainly had its moments. But I think the continuity in the coaching staffs is really big, because Boylan has like zero turnover, because Cat Story's been there quite a while now. Yep. And then Coach Zimmerman and the assistants there have been there for a long time, either as assistants or a head coach. So when you've got that continuity, that's such an advantage they got right out of the blocks over a lot of the RPS schools, some of the other schools in the conference. And I think that's a big reason why those two programs are so good.
Absolutely. Like you just alluded to, just lack of turnover. They don't have a lot of turnover as you see in some other schools, in the public school system, and also too, out of the public school system. But I think overall, with what Hononegah has done offensively is really impressive. What they've done defensively is really impressive. I think what I'd like to see Hononegah probably do this weekend, Scott, is actually get better in the run game. We know they can pass. Their run game is pretty good. I'm not saying their run game is sloppy by any means, but I'm just saying I think in order to be able to step up to the challenge Friday night against that formidable defensive line that Boylan has up front and at the second level, particularly in the actual secondary as well, those backs are going to really have to step up. We know what Hononegah has at the quarterback. Okay, we don't need to really go in too much depth of what this young man he can do at the quarterback position for Hononegah. But overall, just looking at this stat here, it really jumps out at me like, wow, they put up some really, really big points this year, and they've held their opponent to 45 points.
Yeah, I think what you alluded to, the running backs, when I looked at this team, Hononegah, coming into the season, I'm like, man, they are just loaded everywhere. The one question mark I had coming into this was, okay, who do they have at running back? I know they had experienced guys coming back, Victor and Luke Poppy, and some of those guys who are all very solid, excellent running backs.
I agree.
But they're not like the lightning bolt guy who you're afraid is going to bust that 80-yarder on you.
Right.
But what they have that makes them they're all good. What makes them even better is that great offensive line they got in front of them, which is massive and punches big holes in the defense. And so they, their running backs are more than good enough to get by with. And with that offensive line in front of them, they're definitely good enough to get by with. So I think this game, what I'm really looking for is the trenches. Hononegah's
Yeah,
O-line against Boylan's D-line.
I
And
agree.
the same flipped it the other way, too, because there
I
are so many all-conference linemen who are going to be in the trenches in this game. That's
Right,
where it's going to be won or lost, I think, and it's going to be a lot of
right.
fun.
Right. And like you just alluded to, they don't have those burners. They don't have Poppy's not a burner. Fickner's not a burner, but they're tough runners. They can run
Right.
between the tackles. They
Right.
can
They
run
are.
downhill. They're downhill guys. They're not
Mhm.
guys that are going to bust out, to the sideline and then turn that corner and go 60. They're not those types of players.
Yeah, their
But
their
they
burner
are.
their burner is Isaiah Hui, who plays
Yes,
slot
exactly.
back
Agreed.
receiver more or less.
Agreed.
So they try to get him the ball in space or just throw it
Agreed.
downfield to him. But yeah, their running backs aren't that kind of a player, but they're
Right.
certainly
Right.
effective. Yeah.
But definitely, I would say one key for the running game for Hononegah on Friday night: can their backs get to the third level? Can they get to the third level? I think that's going to be key for them to really move the chains. Can they get to the third level, and can they break the big one?
Yeah.
Meaning,
Well, I
can
think the
they break
Hononegah coaches would
25,
be
30
just
yarder?
I think the Hononegah coaches would be just fine with getting 4 yards, 5 yards per play,
Right.
and
Yep.
and keeping that
But
Boylan
again,
defense on the field. I think they'd be just
right,
fine with that without busting the big ones. Everybody likes to bust the big ones, but
right,
if Hononegah's offense can stay out there, sustain long
right.
drives, and maybe wear down a
It's
little bit
true.
Boylan's defense, I think the
Right,
coaches would be fine with that.
right. But I'm just saying, though, if they can get to that third level, they're doing something right on offense.
Oh
They're
yeah,
doing something.
and like I said, with the
Hononegah doing
blocking
something right
they
on offense.
have, that's always a possibility. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let's move on here to the Titans. They've outscored, their opponents 186-55 this year. What can you say about their offense? I mean, Dennis at quarterback, the three-headed monster they have in the backfield. They have a bevy of weapons at the receiver position. They got a really good offensive line. I mean, I haven't really
Yep.
seen Connor Dennis running for his life in the 3 times that I've seen Boylan play this year, and that says a lot. That's kudos to their offensive line for keeping their quarterback upright instead of on the ground. What do you see? What did you see the other night on their offense that made you just say, wow, this offense is really pretty good?
Well, the thing I went into that game looking for is how does Rashid Johnson look? Because we know he's been plagued by an injury issue that lingered throughout the summer and into the start of the season. And he is such a difference maker with both his power and his speed and his ability to catch the ball too. Hey, I was just kind of wondering, okay, are we going to see a healthy 100% Rashid Johnson this year?
Right,
And
right.
I think Friday night he looked pretty healthy and
Yep, he
spry to
did.
me.
He
And I
did.
think that's really encouraging for Boylan. So I think they're getting better now because of that on
Right,
offense. And they should keep getting better if they can stay
right,
healthy. I like
right.
Alonzo too. He's kind of overlooked, but he's just that hard nosed kid who
Hard
compliments
nosed
him.
kid.
Yeah,
Hard
who
nosed kid.
compliments Hansard and Johnson. Like you said,
Right,
that's the three-headed monster. That's a tough trio to try to
right,
shut all three of those guys down. And then you
right.
throw in Dennis, who can throw the football. That's a test for any defense. So the Legion
That's a
of
tough
Doom
one.
and Hononegah is going to get tested. We're going to
Right,
see just how good they are.
right. And you talk about the three-headed monster in the backs. Alonzo. He's that guy. He's that tough runner. He's going to get you that 5 to 8 hard runs. You look at Johnson. Johnson can get to that third level. He can go 50, 60 to the house. We've seen it last year. We've seen a couple long runs this year. Hansard's going to probably give you the same thing. He's going to give you some toughness in between the tackles. He's going to be able to bounce outside. And he also, too, he's another kid that can take it to the house 50 or 60. I think he had a big run last weekend against Auburn for about 20, 25 yards. He busted one, went to the busted to the left of the sideline and just went upfield. They have what it takes at the running game position. I think they have what it takes too at the quarterback position. I think Connor Dennis, again, he's been playing well this year. I would like to see Connor Dennis step up and play better. He has to. I mean, there's a lot riding on this game. Boylan wants to stay undefeated, but only way I think Boylan stays undefeated, I think that quarterback play of Connor Dennis has to go to another level this weekend.
Yeah, I think he's capable of playing better than he has this year, and he's played terrific this year. But I think he would be the first to say he could do better. But what I think these are the two best quarterbacks all around in the Big Ten. And Cole Warren,
Absolutely.
let me just say this: I thought I had his stats in front of me, but I don't. But his completion percentage has been through the roof this season. And what I like about Cole Warren a lot is he doesn't force things. He's got the line in front of him. He's got the playmakers. He's like you said once on overtime. He's the point guard out there. He gets the ball where it needs to go.
Yep.
He distributes it to his playmakers and lets them make the plays. And I never can recall this year seeing either Warren or Connor Dennis make a bad decision. They're good decision makers, and that's what helps you to win big games too. They both need to make good decisions against good defenses this week. Don't force things. You got plenty of teammates out there to help you win the game. Yep. Just let the game come to you. Take what's there.
Right.
And I love both of those quarterbacks from that standpoint.
Right.
I do.
Right. And I think from the quarterback play this weekend, I think it's going to be the quarterback who makes the least amount of mistakes. Would you agree? The quarterback who doesn't turn the ball over.
Right. And the team that makes the least amount of mistakes, really.
Absolutely. But as we talk about, as we illuminate the quarterback position, you like you just alluded to, you got two of the best quarterbacks in the Nick 10 actually getting ready to go head to head. Again, the point that I'm trying to make is that I think in order for either of those offense to really go, it's got to go through the QB. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts with a run game first. The team
Absolutely. I agree. I agree.
The team that's better able to establish its run game is going to have a big advantage. But at some point, we know, because the defenses are so good, we know the quarterbacks are going to have to make plays, and stay away from the mistakes, as you said. Yeah.
Right. Because again, as I alluded to on the show weeks ago about him being that point guard. Okay. You got 2 point guards that are going to go head to head. They're going to have the ball in their hand. They're going to have the ball in their hands every down, whether they're handing the ball off or passing it. So what I was getting at, what I was trying to actually get to was that, they have to be able to protect the ball. They have to be able to hand the ball off. They have to be able to execute that offense. And again, that rhythm starts with that quarterback position.
Yep. You're 100% right on that. 100%.
That rhythm starts with the actual quarterback position, just as in the game of basketball. That rhythm, that flow, that tempo of the game starts with the point guard.
Yep. And
Scott, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Say what you were going to say.
I was just going to say, but quarterback's best friend is a good offensive line. So whichever line can keep its quarterback clean in this game, is that quarterback's going to have a big advantage. Yeah.
Right. We kind of touched on this, but I'll ask you again. Can Boylan slow down Hononegah's passing game? Again, you mentioned how Cole's been really efficient this fall. You talked about how poised he was back there in the pocket. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes. He makes good reads. Boylan's defense, particularly their secondary. They've, in the games that I've seen them play, they've had some miscues in the actual defensive backfield. Boylan can't afford to have miscues against a quarterback like a Cole Warren. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. Cole Warren is good. Like I say, he does read the defense well. He's third year as a starter. He started a couple games as a sophomore in varsity. But he's got that experience. He can see things well out there, knows where to go with the football. So yeah, if he's got a receiver open downfield, he's going to find him. He's going to hit him. So yeah, the Titans defense will have to step up. And the best thing Boylan's defense can do against Warren is put some pressure on him if he's dropping back there to pass. But again, you got to watch out for him to take off and run with the ball, because if he gets a little alley, man, he can take off too.
And you know what? I'll take that gamble. If Cole Warren's going to beat me, he's going to beat me with his legs. If I'm the defensive coordinator for Boylan, I'm going to make Cole Warren beat me with his legs instead of his arm.
Well, we haven't seen him run a lot this year because their running game has been so effective. He hasn't had to run, but this may be the game where that becomes more of a look-to weapon for Hononegah is Cole Warren taking off and running here and there.
Right. I totally agree with you. Again, I think it's going to be a great game Friday night. I can't wait. You've been covering high school football for over 30 plus years here in Rockford, and you've seen this rivalry go back and forth. Again, as you alluded to earlier, you got great coaches on both teams. You got a great standard at each program. You have a culture at each program, and again, that means a lot. That just only allows you to continue what you've been doing is winning.
Yeah, exactly. And I do want to caution the fans out there and the players, like, this game isn't the end all be all, because next week Hononegah's got to play Belvedere North, and Boylan has to travel to Harlem. And Harlem and Belvedere North still want to have a lot to say about what happens down the stretch here.
Yes,
So
they do.
it's
Yes,
it's
they
not
do.
just a two-team race. We're all focused on two teams basically this Friday night. But let's not forget there's still more football to be played after Friday, and some
Absolutely.
other teams
Yeah.
are pretty good waiting in there. Mhm.
Yeah, like that show, Any Given Sunday, any given Friday. Would you agree?
Oh yeah,
Any,
definitely.
any,
I mean, there's
any,
certainly some
any.
favorites in the Nick 10 that you look to,
Right,
but things
right.
happen, injuries happen, bad calls happen,
Yep.
turnovers. So yeah.
A lot of things happen. Well, hey, Scott, man, hey, it's been a great time. I want to thank you for joining the Bailey Pod this evening. Come on again anytime. You're more than welcome to come on, and we can, do what we do best, and let's talk sports, talk football. But definitely, it's going to be a treat this weekend to see Boylan and Hononegah go head to head. Somebody's going to walk away 6-0.
Yeah. Yeah, it's gonna be huge for the winner, that's for sure. But good luck to both teams. I'm rooting for both teams. I'm rooting for Hononegah and for Boylan, if that's possible. I just want to see another classic game. Give us another 1-point finish that goes down to the wire again, so we got a great game to talk about Friday night in overtime.
Absolutely. Well, hey, Scott, thanks again, man. Look forward to seeing you on Friday night, my friend. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Tim.
All right, take care.